Fiona Nagle, and welcome to Creative Conversations, Artist to Artist. I'm a retired ballerina, and I grew up immersed in theater, music, painting, and of course, dancing. In each episode, I sit down one-on-one with another artist to do a deeper dive into the creative mind, heart, and soul. In particular, I focus on those talented people within the Culver City region of Los Angeles, which is home to a rich diversity of artists and creatives. So please, come join me as we step into the artist zone. Dr. Janet Cameron Hoult, former poet laureate of Culver City in the Los Angeles area, recently published her 6th book of poems at the age of 85. Janet has lived, traveled, and taught throughout the world, and she overflows with poetry in response to her many adventures, joys, sorrows, and observations. These days, she continues to be an active community member, a shining beacon of laughter and hope, who champions the arts, education, and other worthy causes through her poetry, her voice, and her presence. In 2022, she was named Culver City's Senior of the Year, and she says her goal is to continue inspiring others to live to the fullest. I sat down with Janet to discover her secret thoughts on poetry and life. Hi, Janet. Thank you so much for joining me today for Creative Conversations, Artist to Artist.
Thank you so much, Fiona. I'm delighted to be part of this conversation.
So I know you recently were awarded Senior of the Year by the City of Culver City. So congratulations on that.
Yes, thank you. And that was a bit of a surprise, but I am up there now that I'm 85. I guess I'm old. One of the things that I have always felt is important is to remind our older Americans, my colleagues, we have a lot of living left to do. We absolutely do. In fact, would you mind if I start off with a little poem here?
Sure.
It's called Whizzing By, and this is something we all need to think about. Now that we're growing old and see life whizzing by, we wish that we could slow it down, gain time before we die. Do all the things we didn't do, take trips we didn't take, squeeze in a lot of living before it gets too late. To move and think the way we'd like with bodies much less agile, as each day comes, we're more aware that we've grown somewhat fragile. But even though we feel our age and think that life's a pox, remember the alternative. We could be in a box.
Thank you, Janet. I was curious, how did you start writing poetry?
Actually, I got very interested in poetry when I was living in Iran. I became familiar with Rumi and Ferdowsi and Hafez and the Persian poets, and I loved what I felt with the poetry. And so I learned more about it when I was in the French school, learned about European poetry, and decided to try a little bit of it.
You flow very easily with your poetry, and you're also very prolific. Is there a particular process you use? Do you sit down in the morning and write every day, or how do you do that?
No, most of the poems are done over a period of time. I get an idea and I put it on the computer. I'll come back to it later. And I'm working on an acrostic thing right now, a middle acrostic, not the one that's just on the left. It'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Has your style changed over the years, or do you constantly play with different styles?
Oh, I'm always doing something different, but my basic is usually couplets, and I love to write sonnets. I like to try different things, in part because when I was teaching the poetry class, I was wanting to give people an opportunity to learn more about different styles and to find what was comfortable for them. I have some shape poems that I love, a waterfall, and all the poem is shaped like a waterfall. And a keyhole sunset. Keyhole sunset is when the haze cuts the sunbeam that's coming down. All right, so I have a poem that's shaped like a keyhole sunset.
Do you remember your first poem?
Oh, I was probably a kid. My grandfather used to take me everywhere. And he was a poet also. We go up in the country when the pecans are ready to be shaken down. And so he'd have me work with them in rhythm. Shake, shake, shake. But don't break, break, break to get the pecans to fall.
So it sounds like your grandfather is the one who started you on poetry with a shake, 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 break, break, break.
Yeah, he did. And he liked to talk in poetic form. Was Scottish, and they used to talk about poetry, speak in poetic form. You know, it was one of the things that his family used to do.
This means that you are a generational poet.
Could well be. Could well be.
You know, you remind me of the different phases of life that everybody goes through, men and women both. We go through the young explorer phase in life, and we go through the growing and the building phase of life. And then eventually, hopefully, we all get to the phase of life where we are giving back. And for you, being the wise woman, you know, the elder, helping to bring up the next generations.
That's really what I want to see happen. And that's one of the reasons I decided to do a poetic memoir, My Jaunts with Janet. I've written poetry over the years and thought that's a good way to let people know about me, who I am. In 2017, we put together a centennial poetry collection with a lot of people in Culver City who added to it. Poetry was able to convey what we felt about this town, how much we love it. When you've been here as long as I have and many other people have, and I moved here in the 70s, it's wonderful to be able to express that feeling, and poetry can do it.
So it sounds like you are writing your poetry for the purpose of inspiring others.
I really think it's important for people to begin to think about what inspires them, what kinds of things to do to be able to create. And goodness knows there are a lot of things in my life that are inspirational. One of the things that I've written about, and I did put it in the Jaunts book, was when I was at American University of Beirut, I volunteered to work in the refugee camps. Mm-hmm. That changed me in my way of operating and working with people, understanding more about what happens to people in this world. I even met Dr. Martin Luther King back in the day, and he inspired me too. And I got back into writing again when my son was killed in an accident. Poetry really absorbed me because it was a way that I was able to actually focus and write about my grief and about the way I needed to move on. The class I taught at the Senior Center for 5 years, but I love to see people continue to use the talents that they may not know they have. So I discovered it myself years ago, and I am doing more and more and writing more and more and publishing more and more and doing what I can to encourage others. Because that's one of the reasons you write. You write for yourself, but you write for everybody else too. And you want them to become inspired by what you've done.
You said something to me the other day about your approach to aging.
A friend of mine who wrote the article about the commendation included a mention about my being the Energizer Bunny. And I showed off my bunny hat because I did write a little poem. Like my bunny? Okay.
I love your bunny.
Okay, well, the bunny goes along with a poem I wrote called Hop to It. The tail end of it, I say, I use my mind to continue to write, and like the rabbits, hop from one thing to another. I don't want to stop. You see, I've discovered that no matter what our age, we need to keep on hopping and stay active on life's stage. Yes.
Oh, Janet, you are a delight, and thank you for your wisdom and for giving back and for trying to set the rest of us on the straight and narrow path with a little bit of humor too.
It's been lovely talking with you. And I do hope that this is something that will encourage people to get more involved with poetry and to keep hopeful.